Recording is on.
Share my screen. And hi, everybody. This is the 8th session of our POA and Gimbalabs Intro to Development course. And today we are sending metadata across the Cardano Testnet. Now, the first thing, I'm sorry, this is really small on my screen. I don't think, yeah, I can't, can I make it bigger? Zoom in. Oh, I can zoom in. Let's do that. Nice.
It's visible though.
It's visible enough?
Yes.
So,
I mean, for me it is.
Mr. James.
Yeah, Fay.
After Wednesday class, when I closed my Lyft wallet, when I opened it, all the transaction media was no longer there, and again, I cannot create add another wallet.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Do you still have the mnemonic words that were given to you at the beginning?
Yes.
But it's so...
But you know, each time you click on add, it always generates a new queues, like what you need to copy in order to create another one.
Well, can you try importing and just pasting those mnemonic words here? Okay, so we've got these two choices. Instead of clicking create now, click import.
Okay.
And let's see if so you can give it any name and passphrase you want, but use those old mnemonic words from Wednesday. And let's see if that loads up.
But I can't do it now. My laptop.
Right. So yeah, so when you follow up with this video, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
And hey, Gregory, good to have you here too. Okay, so Fay, yeah, so I'm going to give you the challenge, but then you can follow up anytime, okay?
Okay, Mr. James.
So the first thing I want you to see here, so I sent 100 test ADA to Juan and to Fay on Wednesday, all right? And hold on, I just have to turn off my messages. Notice that when I sent to Buky this morning, and I'll show you the metadata in just a minute, I attached a little bit of metadata to this transaction. And do you see how this transaction fee here is just a tiny bit higher? You see that? So we can think of the cost of me sending a few lines of text across the blockchain as being about, you know, almost 0.01 ADA. So at current prices, about a penny. It costs me an extra penny to send this data. So I just want you to notice that little difference. And the reason this fee is different is because this transaction has metadata attached to it. Now, yeah, go ahead, Juan.
Wondering if the price increases with the size of the message. I mean, we'll find that answer, but there's a question out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a function built into Cardano that shows the cost of data, right? And so actually, one of the things a wallet needs to do is to accurately kind of assess what that fee is going to be and attach it to a transaction. That's actually a challenging problem. And there's a few different ways to solve it. In fact, Daedalus and Yoroi solve that problem in different ways. Okay, but that's beyond the scope of this conversation right now. The thing to know is that, yeah, sending data across Cardano costs money. And that money is represented by transaction fees. The more you send, the more expensive it is. But where do those transaction fees go? They go back to Cardano stakeholders in the form of staking rewards and by going into the treasury, which, for example, is used to fund Catalyst projects. Okay, so in the long run, we want fair transaction fees, right? Because that's what's going to sustain the network. Okay, so where is that metadata and what does it look like? When I click this link right here, right? This is the transaction hash. And the way Lyft is built is that when I click on this, it's going to open up the Cardano Blockchain Explorer. Notice we are on testnet right now. There's a mainnet version of this as well. And when I scroll down, I see a few things. First of all, I see what Fay noticed the other day, right? Which is if I send one transaction, I get 2 transactions in return, right? Here's the 100 ADA I sent to Buky. Here's what was left over and came back to me. And then if I scroll down, it says, warning, unmoderated content. Right? This is true. Nobody's moderating what people put in metadata. So you have to be careful, right? The creator of this transaction provides this information. It's not in control of this website or anybody on the network. That's decentralization, right? So this is just a warning about decentralization. And let's look at it. Here's the metadata I attached. I just said, to Buky from James. I found a quote that I liked from George Carlin. I think that's pretty funny. And a message, okay? The key thing here is I could post whatever data I want as long as it's in the JSON format, okay? So this is the end result, but how did I get it here? Let's take a look at that for just a minute. I'm going to head back into Visual Studio, and here's the file itself, okay? So what you should see is the exact same information right here that I just showed you on the Explorer. What's added to this file is a key for this entire object, okay? So remember, a few things to think about. Curly brackets, those create objects, right? Square brackets, right? Whoops, autocomplete, creates arrays, okay? And this is one of those ideas that if you're still working on understanding the difference between objects and arrays, I definitely recommend some of those free code camp resources that I know some of you have already been looking at, right? But to really understand what's the difference between an object and an array. We'll look at this a little bit right now. This entire JSON file has an encompassing object in it, right? On lines 1 and 9, there's these curly brackets. Inside of these curly brackets, there is one object. And that object has a key. I just used today's date for the key, 2021, February 26th. What's the value at this key? It's another object. It doesn't have to be another object. It could have just been a string, and I'll show you that in just a minute, right? So this is, I'm starting with a slightly more complicated example right here. Inside of this object, we then have 5 key value pairs. The key 2 has the name of the person I sent this transaction to. The key from has my name as the sender. I didn't have to do it this way. I just chose to do it this way because this is the kind of metadata that we're kind of familiar with already. I put a message here, a quote, and an author. One mystery that I don't know the answer to is I put things in this order and they appeared over here in a slightly different order. You see how my message went to the bottom? I'm not exactly sure why that happened. I was actually surprised. And after this course, I want to try to look that up and find out why the order of my key value pairs inside this object was changed. But that's a different story. Okay, that's something that puzzled me and I want to follow up on. Okay, so how do I look at this information? Well, we already built this metadata index, and I sent you a video after we met on Wednesday, just showing you how I can change the word mainnet right here to testnet, and I get similar results. Okay, so I'm not going to walk through that again, but if you have any questions, just stop me anytime. Okay. So now the app we've built so far is calling on the testnet, not the mainnet. And if I go to the metadata page, I can see there's a lot more metadata keys in use on the testnet than there were on the mainnet. So far, there were only like 51 different keys in use on mainnet, but on testnet, there's a lot more. And what identifies these keys right here? Well, it's this number right here, okay? You have a lot of flexibility with the type of data you transmit inside of a metadata transaction, but you don't have flexibility about how that transaction starts. You need to make sure to give everything you post as metadata, it's going to need a key like this at the start. And that's the key that's in use right here. So if I scroll down and I look for that key, I should find it in this list. I'm looking for 2021 0226. A lot of data here, just scrolling through all of it. Obviously, there are better ways to do this, right? I could build a search box here. I could actually just use find on my page, but I'm just showing you what's here. We'll be there soon. Let's see. Here we go. Here's some big, there's ours, 2021 0226. And if I click into this key, here's that raw data that I just showed you. And this has it in that order too, right? The message is at the end. So somewhere like when the transaction happened, for some reason it took that message and moved it to the end. Notice also that this object here, and let me zoom in a little bit. Notice also that this object here has a little bit of extra stuff, right? So I posted some data, and then, so it's basically this inside of these curly brackets here. That's the part that I wrote. And that's in a key called data. Then there's this other key value pair right here. It says epic 116, right? So that part is added algorithmically to the data here, and it shows when the data was posted to the testnet. Let me pause here for just a second. Who's got questions about any of that? So far, so good. All right, I'm going to keep going, but stop me anytime, okay? So one thing we've already talked about is how this data doesn't look good yet. It's just raw data. And the way we posted this data to the page is we just used a built-in JavaScript function called stringify. All right. But really what I want to do is something useful with this data. So I'm just gonna pull this down here. So right, when you're working on some component, you can use comments to remember what you did previously. All right, so I'm just gonna bring that down here just in case I want to go back to it later. But what I really want to do is put some useful information on the page. Let's try to figure this out. So we're passing data to this metadatum function, which means that just like I did here, I should be able to use it. But if I use it all by itself, I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go back to this page here. I'm going to get an error. And maybe this error looks familiar to you. I've tried to show you this one a few times. Objects are not valid as a React child, right? I can't just pass an object, this thing inside of curly brackets, directly to React and have it render it. It needs either JSON.stringify to turn it into a string, or we just have to select the part of that data that's usable, consumable on the page. Well, you guys have already seen this too, right? We started looking at this here when we did our developers work. So just remember, go back. The other pages work just fine. It's just the metadata page that's broken right now. But we can go look. Remember, developers, we had the local data. And remember, the way we did this is we took the objects from, where's our data file? Devs.json, right? Same thing. We had an object. We had a key called team, which is actually an array of team members. And then we were able to use username, location, and goals. Let's look at that again. Developers, right? We were able to use each developer's username, location, and then we mapped our goals, okay? So if I have this data here, and inside of that data, there's something, let's just get the message for now. It seems to me that I should be able to type data.message right here. Right? That's because that's a key inside of here. Let's see what works here. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to the page, the metadata. And let me just this time find it. Okay, go in here. And so now something interesting is happening. This is critical. The page is rendering, right? I fixed the error about passing an object. However, nothing is appearing here on the page. And this can be the most confusing sort of error that can happen when you're developing, right? Sometimes I would rather something break, because if something breaks, I get to read the error message and try to figure out specifically what's going on. But if something is just not doing what I hoped it would do, that can be really confusing. So why is there no information going on here? Well, there's something else I can do. I'm not sure why this is not rendering. So here inside of this function, but before the return statement that tries to render to the page, I'm just going to write console.log right here and then the word data. And what this is going to do is show me in my terminal window what the data object looks like. And this is super common. I want you to know that developers use this all the time just to make sure they recognize how their data is put together, okay? So let's look at what this tells us, and maybe it'll help us fix the problem right here. I'm going to open up my terminal window as well. You see we've used console.log previously right here. And now if I go back and I refresh, did I save that yet? Let me save this actually. Save. And I refresh this page. It should, yeah, look, it logged to my terminal the data. This is the data I'm getting. I did it twice because I loaded the page twice. Okay, so basically every time I press refresh on that page, I'll see this data again. Now, before we talk about what we see right here, I want to show you that in addition to your console, whether it's a terminal window or it's just integrated like I have it in VS Code right here, the other thing I can do to view that console.log is open up the developer tools in my browser. I'm on Brave, which is similar to Chrome. Okay. And if I go down to console here, you can see there's an array of data here. And here's the data I'm getting. Yeah, exactly. That's right, Gregory. Okay, so there's a lot of information here, but what I really notice is that I'm getting some kind of array. When it does console.log, it gives me an array that apparently has one object in it. That array has something at location 0, then there's some data inside, and boom, there's the data. And to Gregory's point, yeah, we do have to go deeper with how and when data is rendered to a page. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to do right now. But yes, as we go deeper, we want to talk about where and when data is rendering. And Next actually has some really good responses to those challenges. And that's part of the reason we're using it. All right, what's up with this array thing and this 0 right here? Because I wasn't seeing that over here. Or was I? Okay, let's look really closely at what we're getting here. When we do console.log, it actually gives us a square bracket at the beginning. And this is why I showed you this at the start of this session. Square brackets are arrays. Curly brackets are objects. And if you look at the data we're getting right here, we're actually getting an array. With what in it? With one object inside. So if here I simply type data.message, that's, well, let me back up for a second. This word data right here is just the word I chose to represent whatever we get. And it's different from the word data right here. Okay. And so just so we can tell the difference, I'm going to change the name of this variable data right here, just so we know. Okay. Let's call this one local data. All right. So I'll change this to local data. I'll pass local data to the function. I'll console.log some local data. And this is the same reference to data I was using right here. Okay. So let me just save this to show you that it still works exactly the same. Go back over here, re-render this page. It still works, but obviously nothing's appearing yet. I just want to be able to show you the difference between the reference I'm using here and this right here. So what does local data return? It's an array. So actually, if I want to access something in an array, one way to do it is to put some square brackets here and the place in the array. And since I only have one object, right, arrays start counting at 0. So the first object in array has index 0. Now, what is at index 0? An object. So this should actually break the thing again. If I go like this, what's at local data 0? Well, an object. And React doesn't like it when I pass it objects. So if I put that square brackets 0 there, I should get an error again when I go take a look. And I do. Objects are not valid. Yeah, I just tried to pass it an object. Good. All right. So inside that object now, I think we're getting there. Now we've got, let's just scroll up before this array happened. You see how it says epic right here? That's the first key. What if I type local data 0 dot epic? Will it be okay with that? Let's save that. Go back here. Ah, now we're on to something. 116. That's what I was hoping to see right here. Cool. Okay, well, I don't want just the epic. I actually want the data inside. And this is why I changed this word just a minute ago, is so we could distinguish between the local variable. And now I want to go into this object that's on the blockchain and use the key data. I hope it's obvious at this point that if I save this and render it, I'm going to get an error, because what's data? It's another object. And React doesn't like objects. There it is. But inside that object, and now we're really starting to make progress, I've now got these 5 different keys I can use. Let's put that quote on the page. Check it out. And I can now go back, now that I've investigated how that's working, and I can just copy this. Whoops. Okay. And I can put the author here. There you go. And let's say I want to, right, so let's do an H3. Here is a quote for you. But let's go above that and let's say H3 message. And let's just copy and paste a few more times. And we're going to say this is from to, let's do that, from and message. Okay. And I'm going to say, well, let's just show you this first, actually. Let me save that. And message. But I want to identify things a little bit here. So outside of those curly brackets, I'm just going to write the word to and the word from and the word message. And that just gives me a little text. And now we have a dynamically rendering web page that pulls actual data from the Cardano blockchain. This is just on the testnet right now, but it would work exactly the same on the mainnet. Okay. Any questions now? All right, so one more thing to show you. Now, what page was I messing with when I did this? This is my dynamic route metadatum. And most, practically all, right, data on the testnet doesn't follow the same format I just did right here, right? So what this means is if I go back to the metadata page and I look at this list and I click on one of these keys, notice that nothing appears here. Of course it doesn't, because at this key, the data at the first, the first object in the array doesn't have the format that I just used. So nothing appears. And hopefully it's not too surprising that no matter what key I go to, I'm unlikely to see something here. However, when I go to the key that's associated with what I was trying to do here, it looks fine. Now, I'm not telling you the whole story right now, but hopefully you can begin to see part of this, right? If you're trying to build a web app, you can choose a key on the blockchain as yours, and you can post data to that one that does something in the app you're building. Now, hopefully you also recognize there's a drawback to that, right? Anybody out there can use a key. So if you build something that's taking data from a certain key and somebody else just wants to mess with you and just add their own data to that key, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. So in order to make this a secure app, we'd have to do something else. We'd have to check on who signed the transaction or check for some other information, not just to get that key, but also to check on whether or not a person was authorized to post the data there and for us to consume it. That's a different challenge that we'll get to later, but I just want you to know, like, this is half the story, right? And so when you hear about tokens coming out soon, right? Metadata is just one step. Tokens are another step coming out next week that are going to allow us to build decentralized apps. And the way those two things interact is going to provide access to apps like this, among so many other things. But hopefully this basic intro I'm giving you helps you start to think about the role of metadata and eventually the role of tokens. All right. So I actually don't want my dynamic routes to say this. Maybe I'll come back sometime later and, make specific pages or clean up the general metadata. But actually, I want to go back just and use this for my main metadatum dynamic route. Okay. So let me grab all of this. I'm just going to cut that for a second and move it over here, just temporarily. And then we're going to go back here, and I'm going to put a paragraph, and I'm just going to put this back in. This is where I started. And what this ought to do here, let me get rid of the console.log as well, because we've checked on that. What this ought to do is data is not defined, right? Because I changed the word data right here to local data. Work. Okay, so now we're back to the raw data. Look at our array. Okay, do you see those square brackets, right? This helps us review what we've seen. And now my dynamic routes are working again. When I go to any of these, I just get this mess of information, right? Not very useful, but at least those dynamic routes are working again. And sometime later, I could choose to format that data some way. Let's go over here to challenge. Okay, so I've already been through this. Now notice a few things about this page. First of all, I've hard-coded this key right here, 2021-02-26. So it's not dynamic anymore is the key point, right? In my dynamic route, that key is a variable that can change depending on the context of the page, right? This queries the actual URL and then brings in the metadata because that's the name of the file. In the challenge here, I am hard coding things to this key right here, which means that it's only going to get that data that we just posted. And so if I actually just grab all of this, and let's just put it here again. Oops. Save this. And look at the URL. This one's going to be, this is in the metadata folder, and the file is called challenge. So let me go to metadata / lowercase challenge. And right on. I am still using the word data in this file right here. So let me change that to local data. Save again. Local data is not defined. One more time. Up here when I initially define it. It should work. You see how much better it is to get errors than blank pages? When you get errors, you can just read them and fix them. All right, so the challenge page is working again. Good. Okay. So last step. How did I get this data here in the first place? Well, I did two things. The first thing I did was I created this file right here. Let me get rid of these notes that I shared with you earlier. So the first thing I did is I created a JSON file. It doesn't matter what the name of this file is, but it has to be .json. And this file has curly brackets at the beginning and the end. And it has a key right here. Now, this key is a string. And the reason I can say it's a string is because it's in quotation marks. But it is a number, right? This is the number that's going to represent the metadata key on the blockchain. What's at that key? There's an object with a bunch of stuff inside. Sorry, I'm not done telling you how I did this, right? I made this file. And after this file was made, I then went over to Lyft Wallet. And I created this transaction here. I clicked send. I pasted here the receiving address that Buky shared with me. I sent her 100 test ADA. Obviously typed my password. And then the metadata file, I just went and I grabbed that JSON file that I was just showing you. Receiver address. You have to send at least 1 ADA, I think. No, you can send 0 ADA to yourself. Don't quote me on that. Let me check on that, what the minimum is. You can play around with what the minimum is. Okay. And now she has that. She has the ADA. We both have access to this transaction, and the information is rendered here. And so this is my challenge to everybody right now. Okay. If you have a device open and you have Lyft Wallet loaded up on your computer, make a new JSON file that goes to this key and has these values, these keys inside of it, right? These are basically fields in a form. You could think of these as, okay? Give it a to value, a from value, a message value, a quote, and an author. And if you do it right, I should be able to go here to our challenge and just look at different objects in this array that's being delivered from this metadata key right here. Okay. So once again, your challenge right now is to make a JSON file that goes to this metadata key on the Cardano testnet, has these fields inside, and send it to whoever you want. If you want to send it to me, you can, but even better if you send it to each other. Okay, so in the chat, you can send receive addresses to each other and try to fire off a transaction with some metadata, and then we'll post it on the page. You ready? How's that sound, everybody? I can't tell if this challenge is appropriate.
Sounds like an awesome challenge.
Let's do it. And Gregory, I don't know if you have the testnet lift yet, if you want to play too.
I don't, unfortunately. I'm behind the 8 ball here.
You're good. You're good. Here, I'll send you this link too, just so you have it. Pre-release. This is a version of Lyft Wallet where it's hard coded to only work on testnet. So when you've done this successfully, tell me, and I'll try to render your data on the web page that we were just looking at together.
I'm not sure I'll be able to complete this live, James, but it really is a great exercise.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and just you know where that well, actually, I know you've got plenty of Discord channels open, but look up the POA dev course and let us know when you do it, and I'll send a screenshot of it rendered on the page.
Definitely. Thank you.
Hey, Buki. So you actually don't need to do anything with our Next.js project, okay? The only thing, and Juan, sorry, I just saw your note. I was sitting here getting ready for the next step. So on my screen right here is the model of what you have to create. Okay, this is it right here. All right. And so you don't have to do anything new. Just take a look at this. Make sure you're going to the same key and following this format. And then you want to take this file and send it as a transaction in Lyft Wallet. Here, I'll leave this up. I was sitting here playing with the next step, but I can wait. What page is that?
I just thinking of the different names other than Buky. Buky.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
We got Fay. No, you're good. We got Fay and we got OCG.
Okay.
He
Could
doesn't
you write
know
it
us
down for me,
yet,
please,
so-
on the chat?
Yeah, so if you guys want to share receiving
Yeah,
addresses with each other in the chat, you can.
awesome. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. And hey, everybody, I can't really, we're going to go a few minutes over time, but I really can't go too far past 8 today. So if we can, we've got this recorded, and you know where to find me and each other in Discord. Okay. So let's follow up on Discord to finish this task. And once you think you do it, I'll send you a screenshot of what shows up here to show you that you were successful. Okay. But I did want to get to this last thing today in terms of what we do next. Okay. Let's keep meeting on Wednesdays and Fridays. But what I really want to get to is launch some longer term projects, right? So let's begin to turn these 2 classes per week into sessions where we come together, talk about what we've done, but I want us to have a project that we're working on beyond that together. And in my head, the 2 options we have, one would be to create an actual website for whether it's the POA developer course or it's for ABCD, right? We can build that site. And so that would just have to do with front end work, right? Exactly. Yeah. Like giving us something to do outside of class time that we can really be working towards a bigger goal. Okay. So yeah, one thing I think we can do is build a website for the POA dev course or for the ABCD. And that would give us a chance to practice just building a site, what it feels like to get all the information on the page and to work with styles and all that. The other thing we could do is we could start learning about databases. All right. So in order to build an app that people can use to do real things, usually you're going to need some kind of database to store that information, to keep a record of your users, and to authenticate them. And we could absolutely start going that route next week as well. And if somebody has another idea, that's fine too. But everybody here, which of those would you rather start with next week, or do you have a better idea?
I like the idea of the database. I don't know if it will be too soon, and the kind of the next logic step after we practice with this. I actually need to practice a lot with how do you call it? I don't even remember the name. Wait.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct is to go with the database as well, because you can practice style on your own. There's a lot of resources out there to learn how to make a page look good and all that. I do think we need to build a website for ABCD or the POA dev course eventually. But in terms of really deep learning, getting into the database might give us more options later. But on the other hand, the argument for making the website would be then we have a real product to work on, right? And we could always add database and user access later. Buky and Fay, what do you think? We lost Fay.
Visual Studio. I still have to work a lot on that still.
Of course. So you have that downloaded, right?
Yeah, I do. I just been playing with it a little bit.
It's such a funny program because you can make a full-time job just out of learning how to use Visual Studio for a few weeks. There's so much it can do, and some people like to really customize theirs, right? I just try to get it running as quick as possible so I can do what I actually want to do.
Right. That's something I have to do on my end. I know everybody's very busy, especially now with the deployment there. Yeah, I mean.
Cool.
So, yeah, databases would be great then.
Okay.
I do have a few domains that I want to play with, but that's after we create the code, right? But just to let you know.
Mr. James, are you hearing me?
Yeah. Hey, hi.
Yeah. I know I did not pull up with the course due to my laptop, but if I'm to suggest, I would suggest we go for building a project for ABCD. Then while working on that, we can now move further to the database. At least with that, we could know how a full website look like, building with Cardano, like the process from the front end to the back end. So that is my own suggestion.
You would say next week, let's start by building an ABCD website, and then eventually we can incorporate a database into that.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine with me.
Super.
Yep. Let's do it. Okay. So can everybody here? Let's talk on Discord between now and Wednesday about what we want to have on this website. Okay. And so I'll post. I have kind of a crazy day starting right now. There's a lot going on, but over the weekend, or certainly by Monday, let me post in Discord and just saying, hey, what should our website have? What are the sections? And Fay and Buky, you need to be leaders of this, right? You get to make the final decisions about what's going on this website. And if you want to talk to Josh or anybody else and get their input, you should do that too. Okay. But yeah, I love that idea of getting a basic website up first and then adding functionality later on. Juan, you were muted there.
Oh, I'm sorry. But still, if we Buky and Kay have a specific website that we can work on, like a real one, would be better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you save time.
Yeah. Fay, you were going to say something. Oh, we lost Buky. All right.
I will reach out to Mr. Josh also to get his own ideas on what he wants on the site. Then me and Buky, we can also come up at the end. We might not send you a structure of how the website is going to look like.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, I would love for you to be in charge of this. I want to work for you on this website. Okay. So you tell me what it needs. We'll all figure it out together. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Good, everybody. Hey, have a great weekend. I'll post this video. Obviously, there was a lot of quiet time at the end of this video. I'm just going to post the whole thing because it saves me time. So you can skip around to the parts you need, but you can review that first part and go on Discord when you successfully send a transaction and let me know, and I'll confirm that I can see it and that it worked.
Okay, Mr. James. No problem.
Thanks, everybody. See you real soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.